Breaking: Democrat wants armed UN troops in America. This must be stopped, by Liberty Bell for freedomdaily.com. For too long, the global elite have done their best to water down America's sovereignty and hand it over to the United Nations. The goal, of course, for these globalists is to destroy the United States, to implement a new world order. And all that was going along just swimmingly until President Trump was elected last year. With each passing day, as President Trump strengthens our country, these anti-Americans grow angrier, witnessing the work they did for the past 8 years erased. Though, if you thought that the fight for our country was over now that President Trump was in office, you are wrong. The left is not one to be easily defeated and is working tirelessly to regain control so they can continue their plans to destroy America and allow the United Nations to take control. And that was just made evident when one Democrat has publicly announced the desire to bring in armed UN troops on American soil to combat gun violence. It is no secret that the city of Chicago is a cesspool of gun violence, which makes no sense since it is a gun-free zone. You do catch the sarcasm, right? At any rate, for years, the once bustling city has turned into the Wild West, where criminals have the upper hand and the citizens are sitting ducks. Instead of these leftist morons taking President Trump on his offer to help rein in the violence that has taken over their city, one county commissioner would rather employ the support of armed troops from the United Nations. Cook County Commissioner Richard Boykin, a Democrat, has stated that he would love to work with the United Nations to reestablish safe neighborhoods. I'm hoping to appeal to the UN to actually come to Chicago and meet with victims of violence and maybe even possibly help out in terms of peacekeeping efforts, because I think it is so critical for us to make sure that these neighborhoods are safe, he said Thursday, according to a local station, WBBM. Boykin continued to lament about the quiet genocide taking place in too many of our communities, and rightly noting that most victims of Chicago's gun violence are blacks who have been killed at the hands of another African American. So we must protect these population groups, and that's what the United Nations does, he added. They're a peacekeeping force. They know all about keeping the peace, and so we're hopeful that they'll hear our appeal. If Boykin truly desired safer neighborhoods and wanted to put an end to the increased gun violence on Chicago streets, why did they refuse President Trump's help earlier this year? If you remember correctly, Trump stated that he would be more than happy to send in the National Guard, though the city's left-wing mayor, Rahm Emanuel, rudely rejected this offer in January. Rahm Emanuel said, "We're going through a process of reinvigorating community policing, building trust between relationships in the community and law enforcement. The National Guard is antithetical to the spirit of what community policing is." Oh, but armed United Nations troops are so much better? Not at all. And it is well documented that the United Nations is not too keen on our Second Amendment. So do you think if these troops were allowed on American soil, they would stop with their peace mission in Chicago? Not a chance. Here is more from the Conservative Tribune. Let's be clear here. The UN is an anti-democratic organization that is hostile to the private ownership of firearms, as noted 5 years ago by Ted R. Drummond, Ph.D., a Margaret Thatcher Senior Research Fellow at the Heritage Foundation in a column for the Daily Signal. Moreover, the UN poses enough of a threat to the U.S. that the National Rifle Association sought to be recognized by it as a non-governmental organization in 1996, just to monitor its activities and stop it from affecting our gun rights. NRA has been engaged at the United Nations and elsewhere internationally in response to overreaching small arms initiatives for 2 decades. The NRA's Institute for Legislative Action notes, during this time we have been actively opposing transnational efforts that would limit American Second Amendment freedoms. It appears that Boykin does in fact want to help the people in Chicago, but is going about it all the wrong way. If Boykin wants to ensure that the innocent civilians in Chicago remain safe, he should push to take Trump up on his offer to allow the National Guard in to clean up the streets, and not the United Nations. If the United Nations is allowed to step 1 foot in one American city, it will only be a matter of time before they come to others, and you can be sure it won't be the last. It's sickening, these globalists. That's who they voted into power, the globalists, you know? That's what they want. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and again, thank you so much for watching.